who has created this institution as a legacy to his own outlook in life, that of public service. And what is more important is the fact that he also co-opted many other similar-minded distinguished personalities of this country, including Justice Sakaria. And so today you have an institution which has carved a name for itself, thanks to the dynamism of the Mr. V.M. Bansal and all those who have been assisting him and about whom he generously gave all these accolades for what has happened to this institute. So I am also happy to see a lot of the students who are here belonging to this institute. All I can say to the students on this foundation day is that you belong to a very, very important and respected institution. You have a major responsibility to carry forward this legacy, and I am sure that you have learned quite a lot of what is to be done in life to succeed and at the same time to be useful to the society. This institute, of course, I was just going through the background of this institute. It's I think 15 years now. 25 years. Not a very small period for an institute of this kind, but neither is it too long. But I think within a short period, you have really made a mark for yourself in the firmament of Institute of Management Studies, which are there plenty in this country. But you have a uniqueness in this, from whatever discussion I had today, and also whatever literature I have gone through, and also the type of people associated with you. In fact, when you said that I should come over, you also told me about T.K. Nair, with whom I have been associated for a long time. Suresh Prabhu, we have worked together. We worked together on the interlinking of rivers. As I was a member there, when he was the chairman. Of course, we had Tarlojan Singh, he was also a member of the Rajya Sabha when I was a member of the type of people who have come forward to support you, and I think that itself speaks volumes of the kind of things this institute has done and is capable of doing in the future. So I use this opportunity once more to wish you the very best in the years to come. I have decided to speak a little bit on the space because that is what Mr. Bansal wanted it. And what was we decided is to give the different aspects of the space, India Space Program. And this, I start with the fact that modern space as we understand now all started somewhere in 1992 when for humankind it became possible to fly balloons and rockets, to take instruments above the surface of the earth, study the atmosphere, study the upper atmosphere, and also look at radiations which cannot enter the Earth's atmosphere simply because of the fact they get absorbed, like the X-rays, ultraviolet, and so on. So that was the beginning. That was around 1996. And over 10 years, these scientific community, the geophysicists as they are called, or cosmic ray physicists as they are known, they grew in number from 1996 to 2004, that kind of a number. And that is 1957. I'm sorry, 1946 and 1957. And that is over those 10 years, with the type of community that grew for geophysics studies, astronomy studies, and certain aspects of radiation from outer space, and they were now expecting after 10 years something to happen which will put a more permanent place for them to observe from outside the Earth. And that is when in the 1957, the first of the launch took place with artificial satellite, the Sputnik, which was launched by the then Soviet Union. When this went up in the space, the first and foremost thing was that the people outside world immediately interpreted this as one of the extension of the Cold War, simply because of the fact that the atmosphere or the Earth's jurisdiction over itself or a particular country was at that time legally can extend up to about 100 kilometers. And these satellites can fly much above, so they can go around the Earth and they can do what they want irrespective of the national boundaries. So that is where they thought that if you put a camera system on the satellite, it can start taking pictures in different parts of the countries, and also in the process try to get information about other countries. Now some of them could be your adversaries. So that was the Cold War library. So the rivalry in the Cold War in a sense was extended to the space. Therefore, the United States quickly recognized that if you now try to create a sovereignty vertically, then these satellites also will be able to legally start taking pictures, and they didn't want others to take legally pictures of the other thing, but they can do this illegally. So at that time they did not want to extend the national sovereignty of the outer space beyond the already existing 100-kilometer limit, and that is how a proposal went to the United Nations General Assembly in 1957, and therefore the overflights became the state practice. So Soviet Union can fly over United States can fly over Soviet Union, but there were not many countries who were capable of putting satellites in those years, and therefore it became a very restrictive capability for some of the two powers of the Cold War. So in a sense it was interpreted at that time as the military use of the major driver, but then there was also the question of how do we now try to bring a legal framework which is perceived as the best way of managing this kind of developments, and that is one thing that again started taking it into the various debates in the United Nations General Assembly and Security Council. I'll say a few of this to give you a flavor of how the legal system has developed. Now, what happens in this period in India? The first Sputnik went up in 1957, the American explorer went in 1958, and the Indian side, here was a pioneer, a visionary, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. He wanted to see what is the advantage of acquiring the vantage point of space and how this vantage point of space can be useful to this country. He saw a lot of possibilities with respect to the use of space, and therefore he enunciated a vision which was primarily to use the space for useful purposes for the country. He started crafting a vision for this. This was extraordinarily real and pragmatic because of the fact that when he started crafting the vision, he also started evaluating it and see whether this is possible for this part in the country that was at that time what you may call as a developing part of the developing world. National development focus therefore became an important thing. Can space be used for national development? That is the question he asked himself. He also knew that the vantage point of space has also the national security implications, and therefore the geopolitics can even deny India getting into this area if we depend on others. So he said that we have to have some level of self-reliance. At the same time, the friendly countries can come forward to us, work with us, and therefore accelerate this whole process of developing the space for India's benefit. So international collaboration was one of the important things. There was nothing like an institution for running space in this country at that time. I'm talking of something like 1961-62. So you had to fresh start everything, including the institution building, innovative organization structure, because you really don't know how do you integrate this activity with the already ongoing activities in the various areas. So that was the other part of it. And therefore science, technology and application harmony had to be brought in. So these were the challenges which he expounded in the vision, and also a roadmap for it, so that the country can benefit out of this newly emerging area. So today, if you really look at the multi-dimensionality of the state, that is how I gave the title of my talk. It is the vision of the founder. This is Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. He gave this. It had a strong political support. I should say Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and later Madam Indira Gandhi. This proposal received a very favorable response from them. They knew this is a very risky element. On the long run, these kind of activities have to have a high level of investment. They are investment intensive. And then there is no benchmark of how well they can serve the country's developmental needs. So these were all uncertain factors. But still, they visualized that this could have a potential for the future. That was the vision of our political system, and there was a strong political support for the space. Even in those years when much less was known about what it can really do for this country. Technologically challenging, scientifically inspiring, organizationally innovative, and injecting a sense of, I will come a little bit a flavor of all these in the subsequently. institutional mechanism, successive leadership. I want to particularly talk about the successive leadership because a visionary like Sarabhai had to give birth to the space program, and he was followed after 10 years by Satish Dhawan, who really created an institutional framework for doing this vision. So these two were the extraordinary individuals who came at the right time and in right succession to give the push to the space to make it one of the very viable activity in this country. And that's why I said successive leadership. Strategic planning, you will see some of the reasons why I say strategic planning. Unique culture, yes, it has a unique culture. I will again say something about it. Strong user linkages, that is one of the key elements for this because of the fact that we need to ultimately make sure that it is used by many segments of the society in the country. So it is not good enough that ISRO makes a satellite, ISRO launches the satellite, ISRO uses the satellite, and we tell the country that here is a useful system. It was supposed to be used by the society for its own benefit. So there was a strong user linkage and emphasis on self-reliance and national capability. That's simply because of the fact it should not be affected by the vicissitudes of geopolitics. So it was a very slow and careful and measured progress that the space made. We had an initiation phase where we tried to conceptualize the various kind of things that the space can do for the development of this country. A vision was given and some methods of evaluating was done. Then there was an experimental phase. We really put certain things on the ground to test out whether these systems can work with a satellite. We had no capability to build a satellite, so we virtually got satellites from outside, or we built satellites of a very limited capability. So that was the second phase. Then, keeping all this in mind, we started investing more money and put into an operational phase where we try to make sure that these are now providing certain type of services and support for the country's development. That is the operational phase. And finally, in the present phase, which is in the 2000 beyond, we have a consolidation, innovative missions, new directions, international cooperation, and also expanding this to touch the larger segments of the society, national security system, and also education, science, and so on and so forth. So you can see that this was a very gradual increase, both in terms of the scope of the program, in terms of the investments that we had to make, and also in terms of building up the infrastructure, the human resource, and things and so forth. So this is how the thing grew. All I wanted to show here is the fact that it was not a knee-jerk reaction just over a few years. It was done over nearly 50 years. Now, if you look at those 50, 60 years, the 5 decades of space, you can see for yourself how we have grown. We have something like 56 satellite launch vehicles which have been launched into the space for satellites. We have something like more than 100 satellites today. We have 81 plus 104, or more than 100 satellites which has gone into orbit from India. We had a very high success record with one of the launch vehicles, which is the present workhorse for the launching of our satellite, which is the PSLV, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. We have now starting with few crores in 1965, 66 to today. It is something like a $1 billion kind of a budget. In fact, this year's budget, 2016-2017, is something like 9,000 crores, which is something like 26% of the scientific budget of the country. So you can see the importance that the space is receiving from the various governments, one of the highest in the country in terms of the scientific support. And an application leadership. The relevance of the space ultimately has to be with respect to how it is going to benefit the society. So fairly large amount of identification of the potential applications and developmental strategies were identified. I saw a few of them. Industry has been brought into picture, so there is the other part of it, international collaboration, and then we have a self-reliance and state-of-art technology, human resource. In the ISRO itself employs something like 17,000 and our people, and there is another something like 12 to 13,000 people who are employed in the industrial system, academic system. So something like 30,000 people work directly in space. And we have also started a certain level of commercial activity using the space capability, a large user base and an infrastructure which is an end-to-end capability. So you can see the broad framework in which today's space activity is being conducted. I will take 2 or 3 important areas to which the space is today used. The space communication, which is used by the space satellites, And these, if you look at it, of course the space satellites are used today for, these are satellites in which we have a fairly high technology. Indians have developed these technologies. The first of the generations of these satellites, which is called the INSAT 1A, and 4 of them, they were bought from United States, but from the second generation to the 5th and 6th generation now, these have been all designed and built in this country. Now what is important is these are fairly complicated in terms of various technologies that go into it. It has to be kept stable. You need to have the areas of long life, which is something like 10 to 12 years in the lifetime of these kind of satellites. The reliability therefore becomes very important. And there are very interesting technologies in this, like gyroscopes, reaction wheels, propulsion systems and things of that kind. These have to be mastered. Nobody is willing to share these kind of technologies. In fact, for a gyroscope, people don't even respond to you if you make an inquiry abroad, because they are afraid that even from the response we can pick up some clue. So that is the level of zealously guarded technologies that these represent. And so we have built all this. We have developed it, we have built it. Today we use it for television, we use it at telephony, we use for societal application. These are all a single point to single point connection from the space. This is located at 36,000 square kilometers above the Earth's equator. So you can virtually see from that particular altitude 1/3 of the globe. So if you, in principle, if you put 3 of them across the equator, then you can see the whole world. So that is the principle of a height. It's almost equivalent to a high television tower. A normal television tower can be 100 meters or 75 meters and so on. Here is at 36,000 kilometer altitude, so you have a high visibility, and this enables you to connect distant places in the system, both in the country and outside. So that is what make use of it in terms of communications and television. We can also use it for health and education. I will show these 2 examples here. Then there are weather and climate. You put a camera system, you can have a fairly large coverage of the meteorological phenomena, and since meteorological systems are regional or global, so you need to have that kind of a visibility which a satellite of this class can really capture. You can also use it for mobile satellite service. Now you know all these search and rescue, satellite navigation is coming up as a major area where you can have a position fix, and then data collection systems and disaster management. So these are the kind of things today the satellite communication system, the INSAT systems and the GSAT systems are used. And we can see, for example, the tele-education, where the education is a major area today. You don't have very good teachers in many of the locations, and especially in the rural areas. So how do you try to provide the best of the talent available, where they are available, maybe in the urban areas, to the rural areas? That is the question. And so you have a tele-education program of ISRO, where something like 60,000 classrooms is in the network of satellite called EduSat. And these classrooms are directly connected to teachers at one location where there is a studio. And that particular class can be, in an interactive mode, be teaching a virtual classroom elsewhere in the country. So this is the kind of a thing that is possible today. Similarly, there are issues of healthcare system. How do you make a delivery to the healthcare delivery into a rural area? Again, there kind of there are hospitals in the urban areas. They are connected to rural hospitals through satellite connectivity, and areas like video conferencing, cardiology, pathology, ophthalmology. These are all today being practiced by the various hospitals. In the specialist hospital, the expertise is passed on to the rural areas. And you see here a telemedicine system today. There are something like currently there are 66 specialty hospitals in major cities, including in Delhi, connected to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And many of these hospitals are connected today to something like more than 300 hospitals in the rural and remote areas. And also they make use of 17 mobile telemedicine. So this is at the capturing up. So 2 critical areas of development in this country: education, health. The satellite system today can be very powerfully used to network and connect areas on which this kind of service is possible to areas where we have difficulty of reaching these kind of capabilities. On the other side, the very interesting aspect of using these satellites are the use of putting a camera system in space. You take the photograph of the Earth, and from the photograph you can cut out a lot of information about the various types of resources, the renewable resources as well as the non-renewable resources. So here is some examples I am trying to put together. You can have, for example, agriculture. Today we have got a very nice agriculture system, monitoring system with satellites. And we have also set up a Mahalanobis Center for Agricultural Crop Prediction in Delhi under the Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperation. And here you have a crop acreage you can provide, you can have the production, this thing, and the production prediction that is possible using satellite data provides you with an accuracy and precision that the Bureau of Economics and Statistics wants you to provide. So these are the kind of thing that is today possible with the agriculture kind of a thing using satellite. Watershed development is another. Forest is another. How do we look at the environment and the forest environment and biodiversity? Again, satellites are used to look at the present forest wealth of the country, the question of thick forest, the question medium forest, degraded forest. We can separate them out. And today it has become such an important information system that once in 2 years, the satellite data is suitably processed and the health of the forest system in the country is placed as a paper in the parliament. So you can see the importance of this kind of an information, and it has helped very much to keep the forest degradation under check. Disaster support is another thing, flood damage assessment and this. Ocean is another area where we have the potential for fishing schools, identification of the schools of fish using phytoplankton distribution, which can be easily seen by satellite images, and also coastal zone mapping to look at and protect the coastal zone. This is the other area, land and water. So this, and then ultimately also infrastructure build-up, urban area development and things of that kind. So these are some of the things on which the remote sensing satellite, and India has got a fairly good constellation of remote sensing satellites which can look at ground systems with 1 kilometer to 300 meters kind of a resolution, down to less than a meter in terms of the sizes. For example, this building can be easily seen with the Indian satellites. Now, I'll just show you one example of how the pictures of the Indian satellite, you can see the Mumbai, the 5-meter picture that our satellite produces, or the airport in Hon'ble in China. You can see the details of the planes that are parked there, even how many engines it has got, what type of engines it is a rear engine or a front engine. You can see to that level with Indian satellites, this is a 1-meter satellite of Indian origin. And you can also see the details of an airport here. And this is the other part of it. So this is just to give you an idea of the levels to which our sophistication has gone in our ability to look at the Earth. And of course, these are the various things that we do today with the satellite system, communication systems, remote sensing system, meteorological system. They are all brought together. You can use it for cyclone tracking. You can look it for flood management, drought monitoring, firefighting, forest fires, landslides, and then of course international commitment. We also work with other international bodies. After all, a disaster can happen anywhere, and our satellites can be also complement and supplement other observations. So these are the kind of things on which we have today a management, a very effective disaster management system has been created, where we work with the Home Ministry and other agencies responsible for disaster management in the country. The other important dimension is that how do you reach space? This is the development, and you know that we can build a satellite. If we are not having the right atmosphere politically, we cannot get it launched. So early in the program, Sarabhai's vision or Satish Dhawan's some of the initiatives, we decided that we will go for developing our own rockets. And these are the type of launch vehicles that we have come up to. PSLV, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, today has an ability to put remote sensing satellites into orbit, so you can see that at the 2014. We have also now a geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle. We can put communication satellites of a lower class. We still have to go for abroad for higher class. But more recently, we have successfully developed the Mark III, which can take it up to 4 to 5 tons. So about 70-80% of our communication satellites now can be launched with our own rockets, which is the GSLV Mark III. And also in the development is a cryogenic engine system, semi-cryogenic engine system, which can take it to 6 tons. In a sense, this will completely meet all the requirements of communication, remote sensing and other type of missions in the space. So today we will be, in the next 4 or 5 years, we will have the whole complement of the launching capability, which will enable us to take to space all types of missions, satellites built for remote sensing, communication, space science, as well as for the navigation and things of that kind. Also, we are in the process of developing recoverables. We want to reduce the cost of the launch. Today, if you want to put 1 kilogram of a mass into geosynchronous orbit, it costs you $25,000 per kilogram. It cannot be very affordable on a frequent basis. So the question is, how do we get recoverable systems, reusable system, which can bring down the cost of launch? And that is presently ISRO is in the various things. The whole idea is to take these vehicles in the rocket fashion, then it goes into hypersonic speeds in the upper atmosphere, then it moves like a satellite, and then ultimately it can re-enter when you want, and then it can land like an aeroplane over a land strip. So these multiple functions of a rocket as well as a satellite as well as for an aircraft, this is to be combined into a sector system. That is the RLV, the two-stage to orbit or the single-stage to orbit. This is under development. The first tests of this kind of a thing have been already carried out in the recent past by ISRO. But this is the kind of a the roadmap that we are trying to plan beyond the GSLV Mark III in the coming years. Maybe by 2030, we will have the first of the prototype variants of even the reusable launch vehicle. The fourth dimension to the space is the science. Science is extremely important. The ability to go to the space, look at various objects in the sky. It could be stars, it could be galaxies, it could be the objects in the solar system. But these are all the various possibilities, and until recently we had the capability to do it from the ground by ground-based telescopes. We have also instruments that could be flown in the balloons and rockets, so those are there. And more recently, of course, with the satellite and the advent of space era, now we are able to put these instruments into satellites to fly them into the space. So astronomy, astrophysics, planetary atmospheres, earth sciences, solar system studies, these are all today part of the thing, and India has a fairly extensive program of space science activity. To me, the importance of space science, one, of course, the science. Science is always an exciting area. It can be brought. So this is the kind of a thing that the science part of it is there. And the other important part is it is really a kind of a kind of a rejuvenation for the younger mind. So the youngsters are easily caught by this kind of a possibility. So these are some of the things that the country is undertaking, and the more recent work on the Chandrayaan, the Mangalyaan, the Chandrayaan 2 that are being planned now, a multi-wavelength observatory which will be used for looking at the stellar source of the objects in the sky, like the stars and the neutron stars and the very bizarre objects in the sky, and then ultimately to look at the sun, which is the Aditya, and also to look at the Chandrayaan 2 which I mentioned, which is more related to making sure that we have robots working on the moon. So these are all the not very far. These are all the most recent ones that is being planned and should happen in the next 5 to 6 years. So this is another part of it. This is just to give you a scientific thing. You can see the type of pictures that our Chandrayaan has returned from the moon, and also the presence of water was one of the very important discoveries of Chandrayaan. I will say, since it's a management institute, I will quickly go through some of the elements of the management. Space organizational framework, how is it organized with respect to the various programs? Prime Minister is at the top. Actually, space is always reported to the Prime Minister. There is a Department of Space like any other department of the government, but comes under the Prime Minister. The implementation body is called the Indian Space Research Organization. There are a number of laboratories in the country which is related to rockets, satellites, applications, and so on. And there are certain areas where there are institutions which are on their own, what you call the autonomous institution, but comes funded by the department. And there are two important things that I would like to bring to the attention. One is the fact that we have an INSAT coordination committee which brings all the users into one body, with ISRO providing the directions, whether the space systems can be used for India's communication and broadcasting. Then for natural resource management, what you call the PC, National Natural Resource Management System Planning Committee, which is originally it was under Planning Commission, now it will be directly working with space. And then there is a science. So one can see clearly that these institutional mechanisms working to provide input to the Department of Space planning those inputs for missions, and these missions being implemented by the various institutions within the ISRO, especially the various centers of ISRO for rockets, satellites and applications, really makes it a total system with many users and stakeholders from various parts of the country and various institutions in the country to come forward to work with space and thus make the system relevant. So here the question is that when you build a satellite, it is being done because the people want it, the users want it, and when the users want it, we convert them into missions and then satellites. And so when a satellite goes up, you really don't look for who is the user. It is already been specified and the system has been realized. Of course, there are many strategies that we have taken in terms of when to do what and so on. I don't want to go into the details. It is there in my lecture. You can certainly look at this. Then there is another one which is a very important component of ISRO, which is to commercialize ISRO. ISRO has got enormous capability in technology, applications and building satellites and also providing support for launching. So these are all to be brought to bear in trying to make into a commercial setup. And here is a system where under Department of Space, the most important aspect is to make sure that the industries are brought in and the industries support this kind of an activity and enhance the space activity beyond what ISRO itself needs to do. And you can just see this. In fact, I have given more details of this. I won't go to all to show that we have depended more in the recent years on industry than in enhancing the strength within the ISRO itself. And this is just to tell you how we arrived at a not concern so much of money to be spent on a planetary mission. You can see it took us 4 years to convince the various segments of the society. And I have just put together this kind of a thing, and after 4 years, when we came to the conclusion that the society is behind us, the nation is behind us, then the Prime Minister, at that time Vajpayee, made the announcement that India will go for an era of planetary exploration. And then of course the economics, and we have also not only done this without worrying about the economics part of it. So here is a very good example of an thing that we did somewhere in 2006-2007. A space and economic activity. Is it something which is that we did this with some specialists in the economy, and here we have this system for INSAT and IRS, and we find that they have certainly much more economical than getting something from outside and using it out, even if they are available on a commercial basis. And then space conversion, this is our vision. I don't want to go into the detail. All I can say is that by 2030, we should at least increase India's space economy from presently 2% of the world output to something like 10%. That's the kind of a target we are doing. Global space today, I don't want to go into it except for the fact that there are 50 nations, 11 countries launching and 1,300 satellites today that is working with a total space economy which is something like $330 billion. There are a number of inspired international legal regimes, UN treaties, conventions, agreements and so on. These regulate the activities in the space, and we have to come within the framework of these activities with these regulations. And of course the challenge of maintaining space economy, you have to create, there are concerns of the arms race in space, the question of whether you can use the space for destructive purposes, growing orbital debris is another issue, space traffic management, electromagnetic interference, how do you coordinate the various frequencies and threat from near Earth orbits, whether it is artificial or natural. And India is taking this route. You can see that from government to government and public and private and ultimately with global partners. And these are the new policies. I am sure that many of you will be interested to know what are the new directions for the space policy in India. Most important part of the space policy is the fact that we want to push the private agencies to come forward with a larger share of space activities in the country, and we are now trying to develop policies as well as the legal framework to enable the private entrepreneurs and private industries to play a larger role with investments in space. And this is an international thing. India has been very strong in cooperating with other countries and to get the benefit on a mutual basis. Initially, it was our country supported India, the earlier part of the India space program, but today we work as equal partners, and there are something like 30-35 agreements with various countries which provide technological partnership, commercial links, and also policy and coordination related things. So there are all types of agreements and all types of cooperative framework we have developed with various countries in the space. So you can just see the global distribution of this cooperation. Management practices, high-level interaction, these are some of the cultures and these are some of the disciplines that over the years we have tried to impose on our side mechanism of encouraging ideas, rigorous review mechanisms, final product. And the most important is mission executed in project mode, technical cost and schedule. Success ultimately is to promote culture of excellence and innovation, be nationally and socially relevant, institutionalize and involve users, enhance national pride, be self-reliant, promote centers of excellence, influence policy. We have not only do our own policy, but we also want to make sure that globally the policies that develop are such that we can conduct our policy, our own space activity without being hindered by global policy. So that we should have the ability to influence them and ultimately promote a business enterprise. So what does it all mean? they have just conclude my talk. This kind, there are implications of cost and risk associated with any program of action. But in the long run, they are far less than the cost and risk associated with the program of inconvenient inaction. This is by John F. Kennedy. Thank you.